Let's take a moment together and reflect on a subject that touches nearly every human heart. It concerns loyalty, commitment, and what it truly means to remain devoted to someone you love. For some people, staying faithful feels natural and effortless. For others, it can feel like a constant challenge. Much of that difference comes from what is happening within a person rather than what can be seen on the outside. Before we go any further, I want to make one thing absolutely clear. A person's ability to remain loyal has very little to do with their status, wealth, or how highly society regards them. Someone may live a simple life without a prestigious career or a large bank account and still struggle with faithfulness. At the same time, another person may have tremendous success, recognition, and influence, yet remain completely devoted to their partner throughout their life. The opposite can also be true. That is why I do not believe loyalty is determined by external achievements. It is not measured by the title on a business card or the position someone holds. True commitment comes from character. It grows from what exists deep inside a person's heart and soul. Through the years, working closely with people during some of the most painful moments of their lives, I have witnessed a great deal of suffering. I have seen situations that leave women feeling deeply wounded, disappointed, and angry. I should also explain that I approach life through the lens of faith. I am a Muslim woman, and naturally that shapes how I understand the world around me. At the same time, my beliefs are not based only on faith. They are reinforced by decades of observing human behavior across many different backgrounds and circumstances. Again and again, I have found that the guidance given by God aligns with what I see in real life. That conviction has only grown stronger with experience, and I want to explain why. When we honestly examine the nature of men, how they are wired emotionally and physically, it becomes difficult to ignore certain realities. From my perspective, no creator who fully understood male nature would assume that lifelong attraction could simply disappear, or that a man would never notice another woman for the rest of his life. I am speaking candidly because I believe honesty is important when discussing these subjects. One reason for this is that men and women often experience physical desire in very different ways. Their emotional rhythms are not always synchronized. Their needs, impulses, and responses frequently operate on entirely different timelines. Imagine a mother in her 40s or 50s. She spends her days caring for children, managing a household, preparing meals, handling responsibilities, and carrying countless concerns in her mind. Her thoughts are constantly occupied with family, obligations, and daily challenges. Realistically, how often do you think intimacy is at the center of her attention? For many women in that stage of life, the answer is not very often. Of course, every individual is different, and there are always exceptions. Yet, in my experience, many emotionally healthy women who feel secure in their relationships tend to think less about physical intimacy as the years pass. A woman may meet the love of her life at 20 and feel an intense spark during those early years. Yet by her late 20s, even though she remains youthful and attractive, that same intensity may not occupy her thoughts in quite the same way. The reason is not a lack of love. Quite often, it is the opposite. She feels safe. She feels protected. She feels confident that her relationship is stable. Ironically, the very security that strengthens the emotional bond can reduce the urgency she once felt regarding physical connection. As comfort grows, desire may settle into a quieter, steadier form. There is nothing unhealthy about this. In many cases, it represents a natural balance within a woman's emotional and physical life. She no longer requires constant reassurance through intimacy because she already feels loved and secure. On the other hand, women who are carrying significant emotional pain or instability may continue experiencing a stronger need for physical validation. Sometimes they are searching for comfort, affirmation, or relief from deeper struggles. But when a woman feels emotionally grounded and secure, her priorities often shift. Over generations, women have developed a strong instinct to seek safety, stability, and protection. Once those needs are fulfilled, the drive to pursue and maintain attraction may become less urgent. The emotional waters become calm, the constant searching stops. A sense of peace settles in. As comfort, trust, and connection deepen, desire often becomes quieter. For many men, however, the experience is remarkably different. Again and again, I meet men in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and even 70s who describe feeling the same powerful attraction they experienced decades earlier. The years pass, but the intensity often remains surprisingly strong. I once worked with a man facing an extremely serious illness. He was battling cancer in a very private and sensitive area of his body. Despite the fear, discomfort, and physical challenges he was enduring, he remained determined to pursue relationships and intimacy. I remember telling him, "Your body needs time to recover. Focus on healing first." But he could not bring himself to step away from that desire. Even in the middle of a frightening medical battle, it continued to occupy an important place in his mind. Experiences like that forced me to reconsider many assumptions I once held. When I was younger, I assumed that men naturally lost interest in these things as they aged. I thought gray hair and growing older would gradually quiet those desires. Yet what I observed was often the opposite. The intensity may change, but it rarely disappears. Even today, I am sometimes surprised when speaking with men in their late 50s or 60s who express genuine sadness because they feel neglected by their wives. Many describe feeling frustrated, disconnected, and emotionally distressed because their physical needs remain strong while their relationships no longer meet them in the same way. They often explain that the feelings never truly left. In many cases, they still experience powerful urges and attractions that seem as present as they were decades earlier. After hearing countless stories and witnessing these struggles firsthand, I have come to understand why remaining committed to one person can feel especially challenging for many men. That does not excuse bad behavior, nor does it justify betrayal, but it does help explain why the struggle exists. It is easy to label men negatively or dismiss them as selfish when we do not fully understand the forces they are dealing with internally. Whenever a man is unfaithful, it is easy to immediately label him with harsh names or reduce him to the worst thing he has done. But if we are being honest, remaining devoted to a single partner for decades can be an enormous challenge for many men. The struggle is often far greater than most women realize. There have even been experiments in which women were temporarily given doses of the primary male hormone. Many of those women later described the experience with surprise. They said that thoughts of intimacy dominated their minds throughout the day in a way they had never experienced before. That alone shows how differently men and women can be wired. Nature did not create us as identical copies of one another. Our bodies respond differently, our emotions function differently, and our desires often operate on entirely separate levels. Because of those differences, applying exactly the same expectations to both sexes does not always account for the realities of human nature. That is one reason I understand why lifelong monogamy can be particularly difficult for some men. It is not because women are lacking or because men are bad. It is because their needs often remain strong, while their partner's interests may gradually change over time. Some people may dislike hearing that. They may accuse me of being unfair or taking sides. But my intention is simply to describe what I have observed over many years of working with real people and listening to their experiences. For many couples, a challenge emerges as the years pass. As women become deeply invested in motherhood, family responsibilities, and the routines of daily life, physical intimacy may naturally become less central to them. Meanwhile, many men continue experiencing the same level of desire they felt years earlier. This difference can create tension inside a marriage. Because of that reality, I can understand why certain cultures and religious traditions have allowed a man to have more than one wife under specific conditions. Whether people agree with that system or not, I can at least understand the reasoning behind its existence. In fact, I have spoken with wives who were remarkably honest about their feelings. Some have openly admitted, "I wish my husband would direct some of that attention somewhere else. I am exhausted. I am raising children, managing a household, and I simply do not have the energy left." When women express those thoughts, it becomes easier to understand why certain rules developed historically. They did not appear out of nowhere. They were often attempts to address realities people observed within family life. In societies where multiple wives are not permitted, the alternative is not always greater faithfulness. Quite often, people simply hide their behavior instead. One thing I have always found interesting is the way different cultures judge these situations. In many Western societies, people may criticize a Muslim man who openly supports multiple wives, yet they remain silent when married men maintain secret online relationships, engage in affairs, or repeatedly betray their partners behind closed doors. Think about that for a moment. A man who publicly accepts responsibility for another household, provides financial support, and acknowledges his commitments is often condemned. Yet a man who sneaks around, lies, and pursues secret encounters may receive far less criticism. How does that make sense? Many people consider it acceptable when a married man spends a single night with a stranger and then returns home pretending nothing happened. They call it personal freedom or modern thinking. Yet, when a man openly accepts responsibility for another woman, provides stability, protection, and commitment, that is where some people draw the line. A brief affair, a secret relationship, or traveling abroad to pursue multiple partners may be tolerated or overlooked by society. Yet accepting accountability for one's actions is often viewed far more harshly. Even in places that strongly condemn infidelity, cheating remains incredibly common. People may speak passionately against it, but reality tells a different story. Women often stay with unfaithful men despite the pain it causes them. The result is usually heartbreak for both people involved. Some argue that traditional women remain in unhappy marriages only because they have no choice, but many women in modern societies stay as well. The difference often comes down to independence. A woman with her own income, career, and financial security may find it easier to leave after betrayal. A woman whose home, children's well-being, and daily survival depend heavily on her husband may feel she has far fewer options. In many cases, financial circumstances influence these decisions more than culture itself. No matter where a woman comes from, discovering that her husband has been unfaithful is deeply painful. The anger, hurt, and sense of betrayal can be overwhelming. I understand that feeling completely. Yet at the same time, understanding why something happened is not the same as approving of it. We can acknowledge the reasons behind human behavior without excusing it. After spending years listening to people's stories, one lesson becomes clear. Men and women often experience relationships through very different emotional lenses. That brings us to another important question. Why do women become unfaithful? As I mentioned earlier, one common pattern appears when a woman feels that the man beside her lacks the strength, stability, or leadership she is seeking. Over time, I have noticed several recurring factors that often appear in these situations. The first begins in childhood. Many women who struggle with loyalty later in life grew up without witnessing a healthy relationship between their parents. Frequently, there was little or no meaningful father figure present in the home. When a child never sees mutual respect between a mother and father, she misses important lessons about trust, commitment, and emotional security. She may never develop the belief that a man can provide a safe place for her heart. She may never learn what healthy loyalty looks like because she never witnessed it firsthand. When a family is fractured during childhood, especially when a strong father-child bond is missing, the effects can follow someone into adulthood. Many of these women spend years searching for the sense of safety and masculine strength they never experienced growing up. As a result, if they become unhappy in a relationship, they often struggle with being alone. Rather than ending one relationship and taking time to heal, they may seek another man immediately. The transition happens quickly because what they are truly searching for is not just a new partner. They are searching for the feeling of security, protection, and emotional grounding they have been missing for much of their lives. The second factor often appears when a woman is not engaged in work or any meaningful daily occupation. Without responsibilities or structure, too much idle time can sometimes lead to emotional restlessness or poor decision-making. In some situations, a woman may not choose a partner purely based on emotional connection or genuine attraction. Instead, the decision can become influenced by financial security or lifestyle stability. Rather than forming a bond with the person himself, she may unconsciously focus on what he can provide, such as wealth, housing, or status. Over time, this can create a situation where the relationship is built more on comfort than on true emotional attachment. I have met women who are unsure what they truly desire in a partner, beyond surface-level indicators like a luxury car or an impressive home. The deeper emotional connection is sometimes missing from the foundation of their choice. On the other hand, when individuals, especially those with their own financial independence, enter relationships, they often have the freedom to prioritize genuine attraction and emotional compatibility. In such cases, the choice of partner is less about necessity and more about personal preference and connection. When a relationship is not rooted in deep emotional alignment, loyalty can become more fragile when challenges or boredom arise later on. The third reason involves the dynamic of respect and perception within the relationship. If a man consistently appears overly passive, easily influenced, or willing to accept everything without question, the emotional balance can shift. When boundaries are unclear, such as ignoring changes in behavior, avoiding difficult conversations, or tolerating disrespect without discussion, the emotional respect within the relationship may gradually weaken. For example, if a woman withdraws emotionally and there is no attempt to understand or address the cause, or if outside influences remain unchecked without concern, the connection can begin to lose its strength. In many relationships, a sense of healthy protection and emotional leadership plays an important role. When that element is missing, some women may feel less emotionally anchored in the bond. The fourth factor is rooted in past relationship history. A common mistake some men make is entering a relationship with a woman who is already emotionally or legally transitioning out of a previous partnership, or who has a history of infidelity in earlier relationships, assuming that things will automatically be different this time. However, patterns that are not addressed do not simply disappear because the partner has changed. If someone has developed certain habits or ways of handling relationships, those tendencies may continue unless there is genuine personal growth and accountability. When trust has been built on unstable ground from the beginning, it often becomes difficult to establish long-term security later on. Now, turning to the question of why men may become unfaithful, outside of physical desire alone, it is often linked to emotional neglect or lack of appreciation within the relationship. Many men, particularly those who work hard to provide stability and comfort for their families, deeply value recognition for their efforts. In some environments, such as places where financial provision is prioritized and domestic help is common, a husband may feel that his contributions are expected rather than appreciated. When a man invests heavily in creating a comfortable life, but consistently feels overlooked or taken for granted, emotional dissatisfaction can begin to grow. Even small gestures like warmth, gratitude, or simple acts of care can carry significant emotional weight for him. When these are missing, he may begin to look elsewhere for validation or appreciation. At the core of it, many men are driven by pride and a need to feel respected. This is not unique to men alone. All human beings want to feel that their efforts matter and are valued by those closest to them. Even within families, love is often experienced as a two-way exchange. Care is given, and emotional acknowledgement is returned. It is also important to understand that men and women may interpret the act of infidelity differently on an emotional level. Some men may separate physical actions from emotional commitment more easily, viewing physical infidelity as something detached from their deeper emotional bond. In contrast, for many women, physical intimacy is closely tied to emotional connection, making any form of betrayal feel deeply personal and emotionally defining. For a woman, infidelity is often experienced as a rupture of emotional trust long before it becomes a physical event. For a man, emotional attachment may sometimes remain even when poor decisions occur on a physical level. When a woman is fully emotionally invested in a relationship, her attention is often deeply focused, and other potential connections fade into the background. But if that emotional bond weakens, her attention and energy may begin to shift elsewhere. Because of this, some believe that female infidelity carries a deeper emotional separation from the relationship, making reconciliation more complicated in certain cases. However, outcomes always depend on the individuals involved and the willingness of both partners to rebuild trust. When forgiveness is given after betrayal, the long-term result varies widely. In some cases, the relationship can recover and grow stronger through honesty and effort. In others, unresolved issues may repeat if underlying problems are never addressed. It is also true that men and women often experience social support differently after a breakup or betrayal. Women may receive more emotional encouragement from friends and family to leave a harmful situation, while men may be more likely to remain silent due to pride, shame, or fear of judgment. For many men, the consequences of separation can feel overwhelming. Concerns about family structure, financial stability, and relationships with children can all weigh heavily on their decision-making. As a result, some choose to endure emotional pain privately rather than risk losing other parts of their life. All of these factors combine to make emotional healing more complicated than it may appear from the outside. Finally, there is an important concept that often goes unspoken: the instinct of emotional attachment and protective jealousy, sometimes referred to as a natural sense of possessiveness or guarding within relationships. This feeling, when balanced and healthy, can reflect emotional investment and the desire to preserve the bond between two people. In many Western societies, this protective instinct has become less visible in some men. In certain cases, there are even situations where boundaries in relationships are blurred in ways that would have once been considered unthinkable. It can feel confusing and, for some, deeply unsettling to witness. This sense of protective attachment is often viewed as an important part of masculine emotional identity. At its core, it reflects the desire to safeguard a relationship, to preserve its intimacy, and to treat it with care and respect, rather than allowing it to become ordinary or exposed to outside influence. We have covered a great deal in this conversation, and it has been a heavy and thoughtful journey. I am grateful for the opportunity to share these reflections with you and to explore such sensitive topics openly. Moving forward, I hope there is still space for honest dialogue, growth, and understanding between people, even when opinions differ. Healing from emotional wounds is rarely quick or simple, but it is possible when we choose patience and inner strength. One of the most painful experiences for anyone is having their character questioned or damaged in the eyes of others. Once trust is affected, it can take a very long time to rebuild, and sometimes the scars remain. Even so, you are capable of overcoming difficult moments. Strength is not about avoiding struggle, but about continuing forward despite it. Try to keep your heart open where possible, and continue making an effort to understand the people who matter to you. Every person is navigating their own challenges in life, and a little compassion can soften even the hardest situations. Stay grounded, stay resilient, and believe in your ability to create a life built on respect, stability, and genuine connection.